Once again, it was the time of the Lunar New Year. My husband and I moved with our child into the city of Fengtian, never expecting to run into my aunt and her family. They asked me, after all this time, I should have let go of my anger. When would I return to marry the young Marquis, Wei Kai? Wei Kai was my childhood sweetheart, to whom I was once betrothed. We were supposed to have married 5 years ago, but on the day of the wedding, he suddenly changed his mind. He slapped me right there in the street and left with his cousin, Shen Li. I tore up the marriage contract and came to this remote place north of Fengtian. When we met again, my aunt said, "Young Marquis Wei has always been thinking of you." On the day of his grand wedding with Miss Shen, he personally said that once you admit your mistake and return, he will marry you as his equal wife. What a fine equal wife indeed. I smiled faintly and said calmly, "Aunt, I got married 3 years ago. And my child is already 2 years old now." Wei Kai thought I was still holding a grudge, unaware that I had already married someone else. The news of my marriage had not yet reached the capital, so when I met my aunt in Fengtian, she still didn't know. Amid the falling snow, I held an umbrella and carried pastries I had bought for my daughter. As I crossed the stone bridge, I saw my aunt and cousin on the other end, staring at me in surprise, after 5 years apart. My aunt's first words were a complaint. "Lingwei, where have you been all these years? You vanished without a trace, not even a word to us." I lifted my eyelids slightly, my expression indifferent, showing no joy at reuniting with family. In contrast, my aunt and cousin seemed quite delighted. My cousin said, "Cousin, you've finally shown up. Young Marquis Wei has been searching for you all these 5 years. You must come back with us." My aunt also said, "That's right, Lingwei, you don't know. But the young Marquis has been highly favored by His Majesty these past 2 years. He's the most celebrated figure in the capital right now. Once you marry him, you'll be the admired Marchioness that everyone envies. How wonderful, and our family will share in your glory, won't we?" My aunt was overjoyed, and she and my cousin both looked as if a pie had fallen from the sky. Yet, in the past, they never treated me with any kindness. After my parents passed away, they cut off contact with me. Now that there's profit to be made, they come knocking at my door. I felt a bit like laughing and interrupted their delusions, saying, "Aunt, cousin, I will not marry Wei Kai again." Mentioning this name that I hadn't spoken of in so long, my voice was unusually calm, as if that were just an unrelated stranger. My aunt and cousin couldn't help but fall silent in surprise, looking at me strangely, clearly not believing what I said. After all, I used to love Wei Kai so much that it caused a stir throughout the capital. They say that the young lady of the Meng family, having no parents to guide her, behaves in a completely unruly manner all day long. Even before marriage, she is seen coming and going with the young Marquis of the Wei family. In my rebellious youth, I paid no attention to such gossip. I only knew that Wei Kai and I had been betrothed since childhood, and we were meant to be together forever, so I clung to him. I made him fly kites with me, make paper lanterns with me. From the time we met at 7 until I came of age at 15, we were never apart. If nothing unexpected happened, by the time I turned 16, I would have happily married Wei Kai just like that. Unfortunately, that summer, Wei Kai's cousin Shen Li also came to the capital and stayed temporarily at the Wei residence. She was well behaved and obedient, smiling without showing her teeth, the epitome of a refined young lady from a good family. Standing next to me, she was everyone's idea of the perfect daughter-in-law, unlike me, who had no sense of propriety. After all, you lost your parents at a young age. How could you compare to a young lady raised under the strict guidance of the Shen family? Their disdainful words fell upon my ears, leaving me both embarrassed and aggrieved. I wanted to find Wei Kai and ask him if he would look down on me too, but when I arrived at our meeting place, I found Shen Li was there as well. She smiled delicately and said, "Miss Meng, this is my first time going out, so I asked my cousin to accompany me. I hope you don't mind, do you?" Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have minded at all, but today was Qixi festival. Wei Kai had promised to go to the temple fair with me, but he gave the lantern I had given him to Shen Li. As I watched Shen Li holding that familiar lantern, thinking about the 2 days and nights I had spent making it, my face suddenly flushed with heat. Wei Kai. What do you mean? The night was crowded, the wind strong. My sudden challenge caught Wei Kai by surprise. He frowned slightly, glanced at Shen Li, then pulled me aside and whispered, "My cousin isn't familiar with the capital, so I brought her along. Why are you angry?" "I don't even know why I'm so angry. Maybe it's because I've heard too many comments lately praising his cousin while putting me down. Or maybe it's because of that lantern." I tugged at his fingers and asked with grievance, "Why did you give the lantern I gave you to Shen Li?" Wei Kai was taken aback, a hint of guilt flashing across his handsome face as he explained, "She said the lantern was very beautiful, so I lent it to her to have a look." I asked suspiciously, "You didn't give it to her, did you?" Wei Kai replied, "Why would I give your things to her?" Those words easily won me over. I couldn't help but squint my eyes and smile, then asked again in a sticky, sweet voice, "Then you don't dislike me either?" Wei Kai said, "Dislike what?" I said, "Dislike that I'm not well educated and refined enough." Wei Kai said, "Well, I do dislike that a little." I got angry again and swung my fist, punching him on the shoulder. The force wasn't light, but Wei Kai didn't even flinch. However, Shen Li's eyes reddened. She quickly ran over, tugged at Wei Kai's sleeve, and said pitifully, "Cousin, does it hurt? It's all my fault for making Miss Meng angry. If Miss Meng wants to hit someone, hit me instead." Not my cousin. She stood between them, sobbing, drawing frequent glances from passers-by. I frowned, wanting to tell her to stop crying, but she only cried even harder. There was no other way. Wei Kai had no choice but to ask the maid beside her to take her back, but Shen Li kept tugging at the corner of his clothes, refusing to let go. Wei Kai was helpless in the face of his tearful cousin and could only say to me, "Wei, I'll make it up to you next time. My cousin has weak eyes and shouldn't cry for too long. I'll take her back first." So, the Qixi festival I had been waiting for so long ended before it even began. Wei Kai's free time no longer belonged to me. Shen Li's presence by his side was becoming more and more frequent. After the Qixi festival, if I wanted to meet him alone, I had to do it secretly, making sure Shen Li wouldn't find out. I couldn't hold it in any longer and complained to Wei Kai at a tavern, saying, "Don't you think we're acting like we're having an affair?" Wei Kai spat out a mouthful of tea, his fair cheeks instantly flushing red, his eyes shimmered as if brimming with spring water, and he said hoarsely, "What nonsense are you talking?" I looked at him seriously. "I'm not talking nonsense. According to the date on the marriage contract, you were supposed to marry me this year, but now, even meeting you has to be done in secret." This was indeed a problem. Wei Kai rubbed my head, pulled me into his embrace, and pondered, "In that case, I'll have my mother arrange our wedding first. Once you enter the household, we can see each other every day, and you won't have to put up with my cousin's attitude anymore." Wei Kai curled his lips into a smile and gave me a jade hairpin as compensation for that Qixi festival day. I wore that hairpin ever after, looking forward to the day I would marry him. But that day never came. At the end of August, the nanny who had taken care of me since I was a child passed away. I rarely had contact with my aunt, and during holidays, the house was cold and quiet, with only the nanny keeping me company. Her death dealt me a heavy blow. On the day the funeral was over, I stayed alone in the desolate Meng residence and suddenly felt very lonely, longing to see Wei Kai. So I rushed to the Wei residence to see him, but I saw him holding a disheveled Shen Li in his arms, stroking her long hair, comforting her over and over. "It's all right, Ali." Wei Kai's eyes were full of pity, his voice gentle and beautiful, yet it stung me deeply. My gaze was fixed on them, then shifted to the shattered lantern by Wei Kai's feet. It was the flower lantern I had made. Half-burned and now so unsightly, my heart ached terribly, filled with both anger and sorrow, and I walked over to pick up my lantern. Wei Kai finally noticed me, released Shen Li, and said to me, "Vivi, what are you doing here?" I picked up the lantern, not wanting to pay him any attention. Wei Kai grabbed my wrist and said, "The lantern suddenly caught fire just now and almost hurt my cousin. Let's just throw this lantern away. I'll buy you a new one, okay?" I lowered my head and shook off his hand. Without a word, I ran outside. Wei Kai chased after me and finally stopped me on the street. He studied my expression and asked, Wei, what's really wrong with you?" I glared at him angrily. no longer able to suppress the grievances in my heart. I could ignore the gazes of others, but I simply couldn't ignore Wei Kai. His every move and glance could tear my heart to pieces, but he was still completely unaware, holding back my tears. I gazed steadily into his nervous eyes and softly asked, "Wei Kai, do you like me?" Wei Kai was taken aback, avoiding my gaze, though the tips of his ears turned slightly red. "Why are you asking that?" I was too eager to know the answer, so I grabbed his sleeve and pressed him again urgently. "Do you like me?" Wei Kai moved, breaking free from my hand, and coughed lightly. "There are so many people watching. Wei, let's talk about it when we get back." "I won't." Realizing that Wei Kai had been avoiding me, my emotions suddenly erupted. Why was he so gentle in comforting Shen Li, yet unwilling to comfort me? My heart ached with bitterness. I bit my lip and threw myself into his arms, but he steadied my shoulders and said seriously, "In public, men and women should maintain proper boundaries." Wei, Before he could finish, Shen Li's voice rang out. "Cousin." Shen Li, now fully dressed, rushed over breathlessly and subtly linked her arm with Wei Kai's. This scene stung me, and I let out 2 cold laughs, the words spilling out, "Indeed, I shouldn't be too familiar with you as a man and a woman. Unlike your cousin, the two of you, disheveled and clinging to each other, don't seem to care about such propriety." "Meng Lingwei," Wei Kai cut me off, both shocked and furious. While the surrounding commoners buzzed with discussion over my words, Shen Li staggered, tears instantly streaming down her face. "My reputation has never been good to begin with. So I don't care about my own virtue, but Shen Li hasn't married yet. Once this matter spreads, how will she ever face people again?" Wei Kai was truly furious, his face dark and frightening as he tightly gripped my wrist. "Stop talking nonsense. It's just a lantern. I'll compensate you for it. Don't slander my cousin." Wei Kai's words carried a hidden warning, and his grip on me was painfully tight. Yet my heart ached even more than my body. Seeing how he defended Shen Li, I forced a smile and said, "Am I really talking nonsense, or do you two have something to hide?" I saw it with my own eyes. Bang, a crisp slap rang out, cutting off my words. Wei Kai said coldly, "Meng Lingwei, that's enough." I froze, my face burned, and for a moment, I couldn't process what had just happened. But tears began to fall uncontrollably. Since we were children, Wei Kai had never once hit me. Even when I caused trouble and got him involved, he would always shield me behind his back. I never imagined that one day he would raise his hand against me for someone else. A hint of triumph flashed in Shen Li's eyes as she whimpered, "Cousin." She covered her chest and collapsed toward Wei Kai. Wei Kai picked her up horizontally and left without giving me another glance. I stared unblinkingly as they walked away, my vision blurred by tears. In a daze, I thought I heard Wei Kai sigh. From that day on, rumors spread endlessly throughout the capital. Everyone says I've been rejected by Wei Kai, and the marriage contract is void. The Wei family also delayed in coming to propose. My heart felt as cold as ashes, so I took out the marriage contract I had carefully preserved and tore it into pieces. I also wrote a letter and entrusted someone to deliver it to Wei Kai along with the torn contract. Then, I left the capital, and came to this remote place north of Fengtian. For many years, I never returned, until today, when I met my aunt. Memories of the past came flooding back. My heart is as calm as still water, no longer feeling the slightest trace of sorrow or anger. My aunt remained silent for a long time, studying my expression, then smiled and said, "Lingwei, are you still angry with young Marquis Wei? I knew about what happened back then. You were both young and hot-tempered, and had a bit of a quarrel. Isn't it time to let go of that anger now?" I smiled faintly and replied, "It's all in the past." Wei Kai, who was once inseparable from me, married Shen Li the year after I left, and now, I too have a husband and children. We have long since become strangers. Seeing the relief on my face, my aunt said, "It's good that you can let go. Actually, young Marquis Wei still has you in his heart. On the day of his grand wedding with Miss Shen, he said himself that once you return, he would take you as his equal wife." What a fine equal wife. I curled my lips in a sarcastic smile and said calmly, "Aunt, you probably don't know yet, I got married 3 years ago, and my child is 2 years old now." "What?" My cousin was shocked, his eyes filled with disbelief. My aunt was as if struck by lightning, doubtingly asking, "Weren't you interested in young Marquis Wei?" How? This matter was truly unexpected. Leaving both of them so shocked they couldn't speak, I took the opportunity to invite them, saying, "Come with me, I'll take you to see Nyan Nyan. Nyan Nyan is my daughter." When I returned, she was playing in the snow in the yard. Upon seeing my aunt and cousin, she tilted her little head and asked, "Are you here to see father?" I shook my head. "No, Nyan Nyan, this is your great-aunt and cousin." "Hello, great-aunt, hello, cousin," Nyan Nyan obediently called out. And my aunt couldn't help but freeze. Is this really your daughter?" The two of them were astonished, only believing what I said after seeing it with their own eyes. I smiled faintly, patted my daughter's head, went inside, and took out a box from deep within the cabinet, handing it to my cousin. "Please take this back and return it to Wei Kai." "Is this for young Marquis Wei?" my cousin asked curiously. "What's inside?" I replied calmly, "Just some old things." When I left the capital back then, though I tore up the engagement letter in a fit of anger, I still couldn't bring myself to let go of Wei Kai, so I took with me some small trinkets he had given me. Inside, there was our token of love jade pendant. It was a family heirloom jade that only the heir of the Wei family possessed. Wei Kai gave it to me when he was 15, and now, many years have passed, he married another, I married another. This jade pendant should be returned to him. My expression remained calm all along. My cousin, feeling disgruntled, didn't ask further and only said, "Then, should the news of your marriage also be told to the young Marquis?" I was taken aback for a moment and said, "As you wish. Anyway, seeing what's in this box, Wei Kai should understand what I mean. Between him and me, the ties of this life are severed." My aunt sighed with regret. The wealth and status that were within her grasp had just slipped away. She couldn't help but say, "Lingwei, are you really willing to accept this? After all these years of affection, you're just going to throw it away like that? Are you really willing?" I nodded and said, "I am willing, even if it started out of anger towards Wei Kai, but later, marrying him was my own choice." My aunt had nothing more to say and left with my cousin, taking the box with them. The capital was thousands of miles away from Fengtian, and it wasn't until half a month later that we received further news. My cousin wrote to say that he had already given the box to Wei Kai. It happened on the 10th day of the first lunar month, at young Marquis Wei's birthday banquet. His cousin handed him the box. When Wei Kai opened it and saw what was inside, his eyes instantly reddened. He asked his cousin where I was. His cousin answered truthfully, telling him that I had already married someone else. Who would have thought that such a brief sentence would leave the once high-spirited young Marquis frozen in place, coughing up a mouthful of blood on the spot? I never expected Wei Kai to react so strongly, even less did I anticipate that he would come to Fengtian, amid the swirling snow. His tall and elegant figure stood outside the door, solitary and alone, radiating an indescribable loneliness. Nyan Nyan pushed open the courtyard gate and called out to me, "Mother, someone is here to see you." "Who is it?" I walked out of the house in confusion and looked toward the yard, unexpectedly meeting a pair of familiar eyes. Wei Kai was holding an umbrella, staring intently at Nyan Nyan, but when he suddenly looked up and saw me, he froze instantly. Time flowed by, as if a dream had passed through the years. Wei Kai's features had grown even more handsome and profound than in his youth, yet his eyes remained the same as before, clear and bright like a freshly washed sky. His lips moved slightly as he rasped, "Long time no see, Wei Wei." I frowned, knowing there was no avoiding it, and replied with equal composure, "So it's the young Marquis Wei." Old friends reunited, one still using the childhood nickname, while the other only addressed him by his title. A dim light flickered in Wei Kai's eyes as he looked down at Nyan Nyan, murmuring in a daze, "Is this your daughter?" Nyan Nyan, feeling his gaze, instinctively shrank behind me. I picked up Nyan Nyan, pretending not to notice the tremor in Wei Kai's voice, and calmly replied, "Yes." Snow-laden pine branches bent low, their weight dusting the umbrella. Wei Kai's face instantly turned pale, almost as white as the snow on the umbrella. In that moment, it was as if he had died once. After a long silence, he finally asked softly, Why, I replied indifferently, no reason. Getting married and having children is just the natural course of life. The natural course, Wei Kai repeated. His eyes churning with overwhelming emotions as he smiled bitterly. Nyan Nyan was a bit curious and asked in her childish voice, Uncle, who are you? Wei Kai stared at her blankly, then suddenly his eyes reddened. I am an old acquaintance of your mother, an old acquaintance. Nyan Nyan didn't understand and tilted her head in confusion. I explained to her, it means someone we knew from before. Oh, Nyan Nyan suddenly understood, her bright eyes fixed on Wei Kai. Unable to comprehend why this adult seemed on the verge of tears, Vivi, Wei Kai opened his mouth to say something else, but I cut him off. Go away, he froze, watching helplessly as I carried Nyan Nyan into the house. The snow seemed to fall even heavier, and I had no intention of inviting him inside to sit. Wei Kai stood alone in the snow for a long time. Even after the snow stopped, he still hadn't left, his face completely drained of color from the cold. I thought about it and really didn't want a corpse lying at my doorstep, so I pushed the door open and asked him, what exactly do you want? Wei Kai's gaze followed me, his tone bitter. Wei, are you still holding a grudge against me? For that day, when I slapped you, old memories resurfaced with his words, and I frowned. That's all in the past, but I can't let it go, Wei Kai said. All these years, I've never forgotten. He lifted his gaze, and beneath the umbrella, those eyes that once captivated my soul still held their mesmerizing power, yet I no longer feel the same stirring in my heart as I did in my youth. Wei Kai stared at my expression, neither sorrowful nor joyful, and said in despair, what will it take for you to forgive me? If I repay you, will that suffice? He abruptly grabbed my wrist and used my hand to deliver a harsh slap across his own face. A crisp sound rang out. Not only did his pale cheek turn red, but even my palm felt a bit sore, yet even so, I remained unmoved and simply said, let go. Wei Kai refused, stubbornly staring at me as if waiting for me to soften. I sneered coldly, curling my lips mockingly, you've hurt my hand. Wei Kai was taken aback and finally let go. It seemed he understood that I would no longer feel the slightest bit of heartache for him. You shouldn't have come looking for me, I said. From the day you chose to marry Shen Li as your wife, there was no longer any possibility for us. Or are you still thinking of taking me as your equal wife? Wei Kai, with reddened eyes, said, why can't I? We were betrothed since childhood. You were always meant to be my wife. She hasn't been for a long time. A gentle voice came from nearby. A young man carrying a medicine case appeared behind us and gave me a slight smile. Lingwei, I'm back. Seeing him, my face instantly lit up with joy as I threw myself into his arms. Yang, though I am now married with children, I still cannot change my true nature. I never learned the restraint and modesty expected of a lady from a respectable family, and I continue to throw myself recklessly toward the person I love. Fortunately, Song Guiyang is already my husband. He never pushes me away or scolds me. Instead, he wraps his long arm around me, pulling me into his embrace, a gentle smile playing on his lips. I asked him softly, why did you come back so early today? Song Guiyang said, there weren't many customers at the pharmacy, so I closed early. He opened his medicine case, took out a paper package containing 2 sticks of candied hawthorn berries, and said, these are for you and Nyan Nyan. After saying that, he looked at Wei Kai. The atmosphere between the two men instantly shifted, faintly carrying a spark as they subtly sized each other up. In the end, Song Guiyang was the first to laugh. Speaking up, this gentleman must be the young Marquis Wei, I presume. Wei Kai straightened his posture, the dignified bearing cultivated over decades in a noble household evident for all to see. Though the bright red mark on his face somewhat marred his composure, he looked at Song Guiyang, equally unwilling to be outdone. So you are her husband, not much to speak of. Hearing this, Song Guiyang turned to me, his voice tinged with a hint of pitifulness. Lingwei, am I really that bad? I immediately cupped his face and said earnestly, nonsense. Yang is the most outstanding doctor in all of Fengtian City. Whether it's medical skills, knowledge of pharmacology, or even his figure and appearance, which aspect isn't top tier. Don't listen to the irrelevant talk of others. I shot Wei Kai a glare, And he called out to me, sounding a bit hurt. Wei Wei, back when we were still in the capital, I had always defended him everywhere. When had I ever neglected him in front of others? Wei Kai's face turned pale, and a flicker of jealousy flashed in his eyes as he looked at Song Guiyang. I stepped forward and unceremoniously gave him the order to leave. You should go now, and don't bother us again. I have nothing to do with you anymore. Please don't call me Wei Wei from now on, address me as Mrs. Song. After saying that, I walked into the courtyard with Song Guiyang and prepared to close the gate. Seeing this, Wei Kai reached out a hand to hold the door, pleading desperately. Wait, let me speak with you a little longer. You don't know, there are still so many things I haven't told you. I took a deep breath, my patience nearly worn thin, and said coldly, what else do you want to say? Wei Kai met my icy gaze, his eyes trembling slightly, but he couldn't utter a single word. He knew that, given my temperament, no matter how much he said at this moment, I wouldn't listen. So he still let go of my hand, his eyes downcast with a look of deep sorrow. The courtyard gate closed, shutting out his desolate expression. Song Guiyang brushed the snow from my head and said gently, it's all right. I looked up at him and couldn't help but sigh. I didn't know Wei Kai would come looking for me, even though when I left 5 years ago, he was utterly disappointed in me and never mentioned the engagement again. After marrying Shen Li, I even thought he had long stopped caring about me. So why did he come to my door today with such a desolate expression? I didn't miss the way he looked at Nyan Nyan, it seemed utterly heartbroken. Could it be that he thought I had been preserving my chastity for him all these years? Why, I felt somewhat resentful, wishing I could never see Wei Kai again. But Wei Kai found out where I lived and started sending gifts every few days. Expensive bracelets, earrings, the latest Suzhou embroidery and shoe brocade from the fabric shops. He sent them all one by one, even though I returned every single item. He still refused to give up. On the day Song Guiyang went out to treat patients, he came again. This time, I learned my lesson and didn't open the door for him, but he simply climbed over the wall and came in. I was so angry I almost laughed. I said to him, a noble young marquis like you, climbing over someone's courtyard wall, aren't you afraid people will laugh at you if word gets out? Wei Kai coughed lightly. I don't care. He looked at me and said, I came this time just to find out why you married Song Guiyang. He's nothing but a country doctor. How is he worthy of you? Did he force you into this marriage by holding a favor over your head? At this, a shadow of gloom flickered in Wei Kai's eyes as he said coldly, if he really forced you, I will make sure he pays the price. I glanced mockingly at Wei Kai and sneered, he didn't force me, I did it willingly. But he's just a physician, Wei Kai said with some reluctance. What exactly do you see in him? What is it that he lacks compared to Song Guiyang? Wei Kai himself didn't realize how aggrieved his expression looked at that moment. I shook my head mockingly and said, you've uncovered so much, even knowing that he once saved me, but have you ever wondered why I almost died? Wei Kai stared blankly and asked, why? The mockery at the corner of my lips deepened. Actually, 4 years ago, I went back to the capital once. Back then, tearing up the marriage contract and leaving was nothing more than an act of momentary pride. Just a few months later, I began to regret it. Life outside the capital was far from easy, and the area north of Fengtian was especially bone-chillingly cold. I had traveled all the way to this distant place, with no one to rely on, renting a small courtyard all by myself. I often found myself feeling lonely, lost in thought as I stared at the little trinkets Wei Kai had given me. Every object is a piece of memory. Every day, as I look at these things, how can I not think of the people? The resentment in my heart gradually subsided, and I couldn't help but recall Wei Kai's kindness toward me. I even began to reflect on myself, thinking that perhaps I was indeed at fault for exposing Wei Kai and Shen Li's entanglement right on the street. If this gets out, it won't be good for Wei Kai's reputation either, so it's understandable that he's angry, right? I couldn't help but make excuses for him, comforting myself as I sneakily and shamefully slipped back to the capital. At that time, on my way to the Wei residence, I was still thinking that I couldn't let Wei Kai know I had forgiven him so easily. He had to apologize to me and cut ties with Shen Li. As I pondered, I made my way to the Wei residence, only to find it bustling with joy. adorned with red silk and vibrant decorations, clearly celebrating a festive occasion. I froze in surprise and asked, "Who is getting married at the Wei residence?" Perhaps it was because I had traveled a long way and looked disheveled, but the person beside me didn't recognize me and replied, "Who else could it be? It's naturally the young Marquis of the Wei family. Today is his grand wedding celebration. The festivities have blocked the entire street." I stood frozen in place, unable to believe what I had just heard. After a long moment, I finally asked, "Who is he going to marry? Shouldn't his fiancée be me?" "Oh, right, I already tore up the marriage certificate." A suffocating pain filled my heart, my eyes widened, and I could barely catch my breath. There was only one thought in my mind. Wei Kai really didn't want me anymore. I had only been gone for 4 months, and he had already married someone else. He didn't even come looking for me. I was the one who came back on my own. I want to make up with him, but he no longer cares. Tears welled up in my eyes. I lowered my head to wipe them away and saw Wei Kai standing at the door. An exquisite bridal sedan chair stopped in front of the Wei residence. Wei Kai reached out his hand and took hold of the bride as she stepped out of the sedan. The bride's figure looked somewhat familiar, accompanied by the exclamations of those nearby. "Of course it's Miss Shen Li. Who else could it be but her?" There was a time when I imagined myself marrying Wei Kai. Just like the scene before me now, Wei Kai was wearing red wedding attire, and I was also dressed in a red bridal gown, waiting for him to take my hand and lead me through the door. But when this day actually arrived, I was merely watching from the sidelines. I had neither the courage to rush out and confront him, nor the nerve to let Wei Kai find out, because it was I who tore up the marriage contract. It was I who left the capital in a fit of anger. I thought Wei Kai would soften and apologize, realizing his mistake, but he just changed his bride. It seems that with or without me, it's all the same. With Shen Li there, why would he need to wait for me to return? Realizing this, I could no longer stay and fled the capital in disgrace. I never expected to encounter bandits on the road, and to protect my innocence, I had no choice but to jump off the cliff. It was Song Guiyang who found me at the bottom of the cliff. If he hadn't happened to be gathering herbs in the mountains at that time, I might have already died there. But even though I survived, I still refused to eat, drink, or speak. Wei Chicheng's marriage completely broke my heart. For a moment, I felt neither sorrow nor joy. As if there was nothing left in the world that I cared about. Seeing me in such a state of despair, Song Guiyang brought me to his medicine hut. Every day, all kinds of people came to him seeking medical treatment. Even though they were tormented by illness, they still longed to live. Compared to them, my own troubles seemed like nothing more than pointless whining. I stayed for only a few months before I felt too ashamed to keep trying to end my life. Song Guiyang not only saved my life but also rescued me from my confusion and pain. He tirelessly took care of me, seeing patients during the day and coming back at night to brew medicine for me. No matter how immature I was, I still understood the importance of repaying kindness. After recovering my health, I stayed on to help him manage the medicine hut. As time passed, feelings grew between us. I married him, gave birth to Nyan Nyan, moved to Fengtian City, and encountered my aunt's family. Old acquaintances appeared one after another, but I was no longer the Meng Lingwei I once was. I would no longer be moved by Wei Kai, nor would I let his every word and action dictate my sorrows and joys as I had in the past. He is no different to me now than a stranger. I told him the truth of the past because I wanted him to know that I have let go. Wei Kai, we were once engaged, and I did admire you, but that's all in the past. You now have Shen Li as your wife, and I have found my own beloved. Why must you continue to stir up trouble? I didn't understand and looked at him in confusion. Since hearing what I said, Wei Kai's complexion had been poor, as if he had lost his soul. He murmured blankly, "So you came back?" I didn't understand his reaction and nodded, "Yes. And I happened to arrive just in time for your grand wedding with Shen Li. Since you were already devoted to your cousin, why didn't you just tell me? Were you afraid I would still cling to you?" Apart from this reason, I couldn't think of any other. Wei Kai used to be patient with me in every way. Perhaps he had long been fed up inside. That's why, after I left, he couldn't wait to marry Shen Li. My expression remained indifferent, But Wei Kai's eyes reddened as he shook his head and said, "That's not it." He moved his lips as if struggling to speak, let out a desolate laugh, and then, with a complicated mood, said, "What if I told you I did it to spite you too?" I paused, a flicker of confusion in my eyes. Out of spite, what does that mean? Could Wei Kai be implying that he married Shenli just to spite me? Under my gaze, Wei Kai curved his lips into a smile and blinked, the faint trace of a tear still visible at the corner of his eye. He said slowly, "Meng Lingwei, do you believe that in this lifetime, I have only ever liked you, that I only ever wanted to marry you?" A bitter smile mingled with tears, as if carrying endless sorrow. Wei Kai looked at me, his voice gentle and affectionate. Recounting a long overdue confession, he said, "Meng Lingwei, I have never once looked down on you. In this world, some admire flawless jade, while others cherish flowing streams and falling blossoms, but Wei Kai only loved that bright and lively girl. Her name was Meng Lingwei, and she was his childhood sweetheart. When she turned 16, she would marry him." Little did she know that her childhood companion had been looking forward to that day for a very long time, but that day will never come. In this world, fate often plays tricks, and many are those who love deeply but are destined to part. Yet Meng Lingwei, at 16, did not know, and Wei Kai, at 18, did not know either. They were used to bickering and playing around, inseparable despite the constant noise. Thinking their bond was as strong as bones connected by sinews, when in reality, it was as fragile as a layer of morning dew. Wei Kai was not unaware that his mother did not like Meng Lingwei and preferred his cousin Shenli. He was also well aware that Shenli's arrival had made Meng Lingwei's situation even more difficult, with more and more people openly or subtly belittling her. He simply believed that none of this had anything to do with Shenli. She was innocent. As for Meng Lingwei, he would protect her himself, even if others disliked her. As long as he liked her, that was enough. He didn't realize that he himself was also being influenced, gradually neglecting Meng Lingwei. He even slapped her when she was upset. Wei Kai didn't use much force in that slap, thinking it wouldn't hurt much, but Meng Lingwei's tears fell like a broken string, and her crying made him unable to help but feel heartache. Wei Kai warned himself not to be soft-hearted. He had to teach her a lesson. How dare she slander his relationship with Shenli in front of everyone? It was because he had been too lenient with her in the past. He had intended to let Meng Lingwei go home and cool off, but who would have thought she would give him such a grand gift? When he saw the torn marriage certificate, Wei Kai's eyes turned red with fury. But that wasn't the most infuriating part. The most infuriating part was that Meng Lingwei had written him a letter with only one sentence. Wei Kai, I hope you and your cousin die soon. Such a vicious curse wasn't just directed at Shenli, it didn't spare him either. Wei Kai felt a surge of anger in his heart, combined with Shenli and his mother's constant instigations over the past few days. He deliberately decided to give Meng Lingwei the cold shoulder. He was waiting for Meng Lingwei to take the initiative and apologize, but Meng Lingwei left the capital directly, and no one knew where she had gone. Wei Kai was so angry he almost spat blood. His mother then brought up his marriage, tentatively suggesting that since he had fallen out with that girl from the Meng family, he might as well consider Shenli. Wei Kai was stunned. He hadn't wanted to marry Shenli in the first place. But if Meng Lingwei knew he was going to marry Shenli, wouldn't she definitely be unable to sit still? Then she'd have no choice but to come back. So, in a fit of anger, Wei Kai agreed. He clearly rewrote the marriage certificate and even kept the letter Shenli had written scolding him, storing them both together in a box. Yet, out of sheer stubbornness, he kept putting it off until the following spring and never went to find Meng Lingwei. He didn't know that Meng Lingwei had gone north of Fengtian and had no idea he was about to get married. He thought Meng Lingwei simply detested him so much that she wouldn't even come back to see him get married. Wei Kai almost despondently married Shenli, as if he had given up and decided to let things fall apart. He didn't notice that Meng Lingwei was right outside the Wei residence, watching as he took someone else's hand. Childhood sweethearts, innocent and carefree, all because of a moment of anger. They passed each other by, parting for life. At the moment of the wedding ceremony, Wei Kai still clung to unrealistic fantasies in his heart. He actually told everyone that if Meng Lingwei returned, he would marry her as his equal wife, but she did not return. This time, out of anger, she stayed away for an unusually long time. It wasn't until 4 years later that her cousin handed him a box. Inside were the family heirloom jade pendant he had given to Meng Lingwei, a jade hairpin, a silk flower folding fan, and earring accessories. Overjoyed, he thought Meng Lingwei had returned and quickly asked where she was. Her cousin was taken aback for a moment, then said, "She is already married." It was like a bolt from the blue, instantly shattering his deluded dream. Wei Kai was unaware that he was spitting up blood, murmuring as he asked, "Where is it?" Fengtian. Snowflakes scattered, and the sky slowly began to let fall a light snow again. Wei Kai said he had never looked down on me, then fell into an eerie silence, his expression constantly shifting. Inside the house, Nyan Nyan woke up startled from her sleep. I went in, picked her up, and gently soothed her. Wei Kai watched me intently through the window, his expression gradually calming. He said, "I'm sorry for disturbing you." I was a bit surprised, but seeing that he had come to terms with it, I said calmly, "Since you know, you should leave Fengtian." Wei Kai lowered his gaze and hummed in agreement, "I'll leave in a couple of days." He hesitated and asked, "Can I hug Nyan Nyan?" I frowned, my eyes showing wariness. Wei Kai quickly said, "I don't mean anything else. You don't have to worry that I'll hurt her." After saying this, he looked at Nyan Nyan with an expression full of envy. Nyan Nyan looked at him and stretched out her arms. "Uncle, hold me." She was still young and didn't understand the grudges between adults, just noticing Wei Kai was feeling down. So I reached out my hand. Wei Kai's eyes lit up, looking at me pitifully. I sighed and still handed Nyan Nyan to him. "Hold her properly." Wei Kai was flattered and carefully picked up Nyan Nyan. He gazed at the girl's features. Though she was still young, she looked so much like me. Wei Kai watched her, unable to hold back the tears welling in his eyes, a faint smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Nyan Nyan touched the corner of his eye and asked curiously, "Uncle, why are you crying?" Wei Kai replied, "Because I let down someone who once loved me very much. If it weren't for my mistake, perhaps my child with her would be as old as you are now." I realized he was talking about me. Shot him a glance to stop his nonsense in front of the child, and took Nian Nian from his arms. "All right, you've seen her, you've held her, it's time to go, isn't it? From now on, don't send any more of your things, it's only ruining my reputation for no reason." Wei Kai nodded bitterly and said, "I won't." It seemed he had finally come to his senses and left before the snow grew heavier. Before leaving, he said, "If Song Guiyang ever treats you poorly, bring Nyan Nyan and come find me in the capital. I will always have a place for you both." I scoffed and said, "I don't need it." Wei Kai's eyes dimmed, and in that moment, I heard his sigh once more. After Song Guiyang returned home and learned that Wei Kai had visited, he hurriedly asked if I was all right. I happily told him that Wei Kai had already left and would not be coming back. Song Guiyang was puzzled and asked me why I was so certain. I sneered and said, "As long as he still has any sense of shame, he won't come." Admittedly, I was the one who tore up the marriage contract first, but I didn't force him to choose Shen Li. Since he made his choice, he shouldn't regret it. The elders of the Wei family never really liked me. I couldn't see it clearly before. But now I can understand. If it weren't for their dissatisfaction, how could my marriage with Wei Kai have been delayed until Shen Li appeared? Including those words that praised Shen Li while belittling me, they were deliberately spread in front of me by someone with an agenda, hoping to make me feel ashamed. Wei Kai's mother really went to great lengths. I curled my lips in a cold sneer, pushing aside the trivial matters of the capital. Unaware that Wei Kai had returned and was already reorganizing the estate, he divorced Shen Li on the grounds that she had not borne him a son. Shen Li knelt weeping pitifully before the mansion gate, abandoning all restraint as she cried out, "In all these years of marriage, you have never shared a bed with me. How could I possibly have become pregnant? My lord, why have you treated me this way?" She wept bitterly, but Wei Kai showed no mercy at all. In the end, Shen Li was sent back to the Shen family and, within 2 years, passed away in sorrow. In Fengtian, Song Guiyang and I managed the medicine shop in an orderly manner, and Nyan Nyan grew up gradually under our care. Another winter arrived, with heavy snow falling. Nyan Nyan gazed out the courtyard gate and said, "Mother, I think I see a familiar person." I chuckled and said, "Don't tell me it's another candid hawthorn seller." Nyen Nyen's cheeks flushed with a hint of pink as she shook her head. No, that person had a pair of very beautiful eyes, like a calm lake. This description unexpectedly reminded me of Wei Kai, but I heard Wei Kai had gone to the northwestern border 2 years ago. How could he possibly appear in Fengtian? I asked doubtfully, "Are you sure you didn't misread it?" Nyan Nyan said uncertainly, "Probably not. The snow was too heavy." She wasn't sure if those eyes were just a fleeting illusion, seeing her still standing on tiptoe and craning her neck. I called out helplessly, "Stop looking and come eat first." The warm aroma of a meal wafted from the small courtyard, and the figure standing outside the gate seemed to smile faintly before turning to leave. The heavy snow fell upon his umbrella, and his face, now etched with fine lines, was no longer young, yet his eyes remained as clear and bright as the washed-out sky. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next. There is another similar story. Let's continue to see. At the flower viewing banquet, my legitimate sister had her clothes torn off by a cat. To protect her reputation, I quickly draped my outer garment over her. She smiled and thanked me, but that very night, she stripped me of my clothes and threw me into a den of beggars. "You meddlesome wretch, who told you to give me your clothes? If it weren't for you, I would have become the crown princess by now, since you're so kind-hearted. Why not use your body to warm these poor beggars?" Only then did I realize that my elder half-sister had intentionally exposed herself, just to win the pity of the passing crown prince. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my elder half-sister's clothes were torn off by a stray cat. This time, I didn't kindly cover her with clothes, nor did I push away the noble lady who had deliberately stepped on the hem of her skirt. "Since you don't want to wear clothes, then don't wear any at all." Placing the flowers so far away, how is anyone supposed to see them? Kui Chinghe, what are you spacing out for? Hurry up and bring the flowers over to me. Hearing those words, I knew I had been reborn. I didn't obediently fetch the flowers like I did in my previous life. Instead, she straightened her back and spoke loudly. "Sister, the 9-colored sacred lotus was a tribute from foreign lands to Her Highness the Princess. That Her Highness allows us into the estate to admire the flowers is already a great favor. How could we possibly lay hands on the sacred lotus?" The 9-colored sacred lotus was in full bloom, its fragrance overwhelming, and the noble ladies were utterly captivated. However, the princess cherished her flowers as if they were her own life and had explicitly decreed that no one, regardless of status, was allowed to do more than view them from across the lake. Kui Qingrao's domineering actions undoubtedly provoked public outrage. Who here wasn't invited? Why should Miss Kui get the flowers brought over just because she wants to see them? And why? Because her father is a minister. Wait, silly me, she's about to lose even that minister father of hers. So she's desperately trying to seduce the crown prince because she's afraid the minister's mansion will fall and she'll be sold into prostitution. She should take a look at herself and see if she's even worthy. As she said this, everyone looked ingratiatingly at Shen Minglan, the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Yongning, who was holding a cat. Everyone had witnessed the fierce rivalry between Kui Qing'ao and Shen Minglan as they fought tooth and nail for the position of crown princess. With the East Palace selection imminent, my father, who served as the Minister of Works, was suspended and placed under house arrest on suspicion of embezzlement. Meanwhile, Shen Minglan came from a military family, had the support of her aunt, the Grand Princess, and had recently been summoned to the palace several times to accompany the Empress. Rumors say that Shen Minglan's name is already written on the imperial decree, and the selection process is just a formality. Kui Qing'ao trembled with rage. Normally, she would have caused a scene by now. But she was staring intently at the cat in Shen Minglan's arms. I knew that her intention to see the flowers was just a pretense. Her real goal was to use the floral scent to provoke Shen Minglan's cat. In my previous life, I endured countless scornful gazes to fetch the flower for Kui Qing'ao. Under the pretense of admiring the flower, Kui Chingareo held the entire pot in her arms. The rich floral fragrance combined with the medicinal powder from her sachet provoked a sharp cry from Shenminglan's cat, which then pounced on Kui Chingareo. Kui Chingrao's already thin gauze dress instantly fell away, revealing large areas of her skin. There were also male guests at the flower viewing banquet, and I feared her reputation would be compromised, so I quickly took off my outer garment and draped it over her, in my haste. I missed the venomous resentment in Kui Chingrao's eyes and failed to detect the murderous intent hidden beneath her words of gratitude. That very night, shortly after finishing dinner, I suddenly felt a burning heat all over my body. Before I could react, I was stripped of my clothes by the servants brought by Kui Chingareo and thrown into a beggar's den in the outskirts of the capital. I tried to pierce my arm with a hairpin to stay awake. Kui Chingareo covered her mouth in shock. "Can't you see my kind-hearted sister is trying to harm herself? Hurry up and sever the tendons in her hands and feet. Or how else will she be able to warm those poor, unfortunate souls?" I didn't understand how I had offended her and desperately begged for mercy. She sneered coldly and raised her foot to crush my blooded hand. "Meddlesome wretch, who told you to give me clothes? If it weren't for you, I would have become the crown princess by now." I suppressed the pain and reminded her, "In our dynasty, a woman's reputation is more important than anything. If His Highness the Crown Prince hadn't arrived in time, what would you have done? Sister, I truly did it for your own good." A noble lady exposing her skin in public, though not against the law, means her body has been seen by others. Which respectable young gentleman would come to propose marriage after this? The final outcome would either be ending her life with a white silk scarf or becoming a nun, with no chance of turning her life around. Kui Chingareo was first stunned, then furious. "Stop pretending. You gave me the cloak just to catch the crown prince's attention, didn't you? You're no different from that lowly Shenminglan. I grew up with the crown prince, and in front of everyone, he would never let me be humiliated. The crown prince is kind and virtuous. He will surely give me a proper status afterward. And that vile Shenminglan is the one who harmed me. There's no way the crown prince would marry her as his principal consort." I found it utterly ridiculous. If the crown prince truly had feelings for her, why would he avoid her like the plague after her father was suspended from his post, allow noble ladies in the capital to gossip about her, and hastily seek to marry Shenminglan? "My dear sister, since you're so kind-hearted, why don't you warm these poor beggars with your body?" Regret burned through me, twisting my insides. Watching the beggars swarm forward, I threw myself against the guard's broadsword. I never expected heaven to take pity on me, granting me rebirth. Now I will surely make the wicked pay in blood. When I tell you to fetch the flowers, you fetch them. How dare you talk back? Do you believe I'll dig up your mother's grave when we return? Kui Chingrao's ruthless voice snapped me back to my senses. My mother was originally a flower seller on the streets. After my father forced himself on her, she had no choice but to enter the mansion as a concubine. The man's momentary pleasure soon faded, and he quickly forgot about my mother. When she fell gravely ill, she couldn't even get a bowl of medicinal soup, and soon she passed away, her fragrance extinguished. Although I bear the title of the second young lady of the minister's mansion, I am no different from Kui Chingrao's maid. So in her previous life, she had no qualms about stripping me of my clothes and throwing me into a beggar's den. I suppressed my hatred and feigned surprise. A renowned beauty is like a flower that captivates a city. Admiring from afar is enough. Why are you so insistent on bringing the flower closer? Sister, could it be that this flower is somehow different? Kui Chingareo instantly panicked. What are you talking about? I'm just curious and wanted to take a look. I am your legitimate elder sister. When I tell you to fetch it, you go fetch it. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll make sure you regret it right now. With that, she shoved me forward. She actually went to get the flower. How dare she offend the eldest princess? She really is an ignorant, illegitimate daughter. The scornful voices of the crowd struck me just as they had in my past life. Yet I merely smiled. Lifting my eyes again, I resumed my timid demeanor. Passing through the plank walkway to pick up the 9-colored sacred lotus, as I turned, I deliberately moved closer to Shenminglan beneath the cool pavilion, without the 9-leaf grass from Kui Chingrao's sachet. The cat merely arched its back and raised its tail. It was said that Shen Minglan adored this cat immensely, feeding it personally and sharing both meals and living quarters. Sure enough, Shen Minglan frowned and looked toward me, but I had already lowered my head and quickly walked toward Kui Qingrao. Visibly, the tension in Kui Qingrao's eyes faded, and she shot me an impatient glare. Taking so long just to fetch a pot of flowers, truly a disgraceful thing, indeed. Birds of a feather flock together, all equally disgraceful. If you dare to bring that flower out, be careful, you might walk in standing but be carried out lying down. The one who said this was Shen Minglan's close friend, Sun Xiao, the daughter of the Ministry of Works Vice Minister. My father was suspended from his position due to his alleged involvement in the Tanju corruption case. Now, the Chief Minister of the Court of Judicial Review and the censor have gone to Tanju to conduct a thorough investigation. If my father is convicted of embezzlement, which worsened the flood disaster in Tanju and harmed thousands of people, Sun Xiao's father will take over my father's position. Who would have thought the younger one would die first, not the old one? Isn't this a case of the white-haired sending off the black-haired? Kui Qingrao trembled with rage. But when she picked up the flower pot, she revealed a condescending smile. You bitch, all you can do is talk big. Once I become the crown princess, my father will surely be safe and sound. As for you, I will make your life a living hell. At that moment, the cat also went berserk, pouncing madly towards Kui Qingrao. Just like in her previous life, it not only tore off her clothes but also scratched her until she bled. She desperately protected her face, so she didn't notice Sun Xiao stepping on her skirt with a gloomy expression. Kui Qingrao wore only a thin skirt on her lower body for the sake of appearance, moving with an ethereal grace as she walked. If that skirt were to fall, she would be considered even worse than a courtesan, her reputation utterly ruined. In my past life, I pushed aside the mischievous Sun Xiao and quickly took off my outer garment to drape over her. Only then was her reputation preserved. Since she hates me for being in the way, then, this time, I'll satisfy you and let you expose yourself completely. The scream startled the princess and the male guests. The women despised Kui Qingrao for monopolizing the 9-colored sacred lotus, so naturally, no one stepped forward to cover her with clothes. Seeing the shattered holy lotus on the ground, the eldest princess was furious and would not give Kui Qingrao a pleasant look. In that moment, Kui Qingrao truly fell naked onto the ground. Her snow-white skin, marked with bloody streaks, and her jade-like legs exposed and tangled together, created a truly vivid and alluring scene. All the men stared blankly at Kui Qingrao. As expected, Kui Qingrao's scandalous reputation would spread throughout the capital by tomorrow. Kui Qingrao hunched her shoulders, her eyes filled with unease. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and without any hesitation, she spread her arms wide, revealing the snow-white skin of her chest and the scratch marks on her neck and shoulders. Your Highness the Crown Prince, Qingrao is innocent. I've been harmed by this beast and now I have no face to show myself. The Crown Prince's face was full of disgust, but in front of so many people, he couldn't pretend not to see. He shouted angrily, "Where are the Kui family's people? Don't they know to help Miss Kui up when something like this happens?" When she went out, Kui Qingrao hadn't brought any maids with her. I had no choice but to step forward, wiping my tears and pretending to take off my outer garment. As I expected, Kui Qingrao pushed me away and grabbed the prince's sleeve with a pitiful expression. I called out to her earlier, but she completely ignored me. As sisters, she just stood by and watched me make a fool of myself. What else can I expect from her? And them, all of them are bullying me. Brother Crown Prince, you're the only one I have left. The prince, eager to get rid of this mess, scolded me coldly. Second Miss Kui, as sisters, how can you be so cold-blooded and harsh? Hurry up and attend to your elder sister's washing and dressing. With the Crown Prince's command, I had no choice but to comply. Kui Qingrao grew somewhat anxious, let out a startled cry, and stumbled into the Crown Prince's embrace, in front of everyone, with our skin touching. The Crown Prince's face turned pale and flushed with anger as he glared at me irritably, hoping I would pull Kui Qingrao away, but I was so timid. How could I dare to step forward? The Crown Prince had no choice but to grit his teeth. take off his cloak, and drape it over Kui Qing'erao. Kui Qing'erao looked smugly at Shen Minglan. I was standing perfectly still and doing nothing, so I don't know why Sister Shen's cat suddenly lunged at me. Sister Shen, I know you don't like me, but as fellow women, how could you harm me like this? Do you have to drive me to my death before you're satisfied? Everyone cast suspicious glances at Shen Minglan. After all, everyone knew they were competing for the position of crown princess. Shen Minglan was no fool, and she quickly realized what was happening. You set me up. The princess also sneered coldly. Miss Kui, I know Minglan's character better than anyone. How dare you frame her? Have you considered the consequences? Kui Qing'erao was crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. Your Highness, what kind of young lady would use her reputation to frame someone? Sister Shen, you are about to become the crown princess, the future mother of the nation. How can you be so vicious and heartless? Indeed, what kind of young lady would sacrifice her reputation to harm others? Perhaps it really was Miss Shen who did it, with such character. How can she become the crown princess and set an example for all the women in the kingdom? Discussions rose and fell. Shen Minglan's face turned pale as she questioned Kui Qing'erao. You deliberately moved the flowers just to provoke my cat and stage a calculated act of self-sacrifice, am I right? Kui Qing'erao hadn't expected Shen Minglan to figure it out and was somewhat flustered. It was clearly you who harmed me, without any evidence. Don't even think of pinning everything on me. Shen Minglan looked at me. Second Miss Kui, you have always been by Kui Qing'erao's side, in front of everyone. Would you be willing to testify for me? Looking at Kui Qing'erao's suddenly pale face, I smiled. Since being reborn, I came back to deal with her, so of course I was willing to expose her. Just as he was about to nod, the guard suddenly approached and whispered a few words into the crown prince's ear. The crown prince's previously impatient expression instantly changed. Without the slightest hesitation, he thrust his sword toward the snow-white cat. Minglan, you have truly gone too far this time. Apologize to Qing'erao. Shen Minglan was utterly incredulous. This is utterly absurd. She was the one trying to harm me. Why should I be the one to apologize? Then she turned her gaze to me. Miss Kui, with His Highness the Crown Prince, Her Highness the Princess, and myself here to support you, you need only speak the truth of what you know. The Crown Prince frowned. His look toward me shifting from impatience to outright disgust. Miss Kui, what do you know? Kui Qing'erao stared at me, then suddenly smiled, her eyes filled with undisguised pride and murderous intent. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Because the guard just reported that the Chief Minister of the Court of Judicial Review and the censor have returned to the capital and confirmed that my father is innocent. Kui Qing'erao's backer has returned. And the Crown Prince has once again included Kui Qing'erao among the candidates for the Eastern Palace's consorts. Minglan, I never thought you were such a narrow-minded person. Did you think that by tarnishing Qing'erao's reputation, she would be despised by others? You are mistaken. I admire those with noble character. And then there's Miss Kui II. The Crown Prince looked at me with disgust. The distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children isn't important. But your malicious heart truly disgusts me. With those words, the Crown Prince embraced Kui Qing'erao in his arms, ignoring Shen Minglan's demand to report to the authorities and showing no regard for the princess's dignity, then strode away. Shen Minglan looked utterly devastated. Staggering unsteadily on her feet, I wanted to support her. Sun Xiao pushed me away with a single shove. Who needs your fake sympathy? You're just like your sister. It was clearly Kui Qing'erao who framed Minglan. So why didn't you speak up? Although Shen Minglan was somewhat disappointed, she didn't make things difficult for me. You're both from the Kui family. I know you have your reasons. You may leave. At that moment, Kui Qing'erao sent someone to find me. I lowered my voice and quickly whispered 2 words to Shen Minglan Tanju. Whether the minister's residence is truly clean or not, only those who live inside know for sure. 5 years ago, my father was still a 5th-rank attendant. And his immediate superior, Vice Minister Li, happened to be in charge of building the Tanju Dam. Not long after, a flood struck Tanju, drowning thousands of people, all because the reported stone baskets turned out to be woven straw bags that collapsed upon contact with water. Minister Li was impoverished and often performed charitable acts to help others. When his home was raided, not even 100 taels of silver were found. How could he be a corrupt official who cheated the people and harmed the state? During that period, the Kui family actually made a fortune. Not long after, my father was promoted to the position of vice minister, and the family's wealth continued to grow. From then on, Kui Chingareo strutted through the capital with an air of arrogance. It wouldn't be easy to get rid of Kui Chingareo, however, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. As soon as I returned to the Kui residence, I was grabbed and slapped twice across the face. My stepmother stood before me in a rage. "You wretched servant, Chingareo suffered such humiliation at the banquet, and you just stood by and watched." My father's face was dark with anger as he smashed a teacup right in front of me. When one prospers, all prosper. When one suffers, all suffer. Do you really think that if your sister's reputation is ruined and she can't make a good marriage, you'll be able to marry well? Kui Chingareo had already changed into a brand new dress and was standing timidly behind her father. My younger sister is still young and is a concubine-born daughter, so it's only natural for her to feel jealous of me. Now that she has offended the crown prince due to her improper conduct, she's truly unsuitable for a high-ranking marriage. I've heard that the crown prince recently wants to win over Minister Chen from the Ministry of Justice. And that Minister Chen seems to be looking for a second wife. Becoming the legal wife of a 7th-rank official would be an immense blessing. Father, why not help arrange this good marriage for my sister? It would also help share the crown prince's concerns. It's really hard on Kui Chingareo. She actually came up with a way to both please the crown prince and torment me. Minister Chen is over 60 years old and has remained a 7th-rank official because of his terrible reputation. Whether dealing with prisoners or the women in his household, he frequently resorts to beating and scolding. His previous wife was beaten to death by him. So, no family in the capital was willing to marry their daughter to him. I held back my sarcasm. Sister may have ruined her reputation, but isn't it worth it to exchange a ruined reputation for the position of crown princess? If I had protected sister, how would His Highness the Crown Prince have had the chance to play the hero and save the beauty? I was clearly helping sister. My father was furious. Absurd. How can one become the crown princess with a tarnished reputation, regardless of the crown prince's opinion? How would the ministers ever allow a crown princess with a damaged reputation? Kui Chingareo felt somewhat guilty and glared at me fiercely. As if struck by a thought, she raised her chin again, her face full of disdain. Regardless. As sisters, when I was in disarray, you didn't even think to protect me. It just shows how malicious you are. Whatever I do to you, you deserve it. How ridiculous. In my past life, when I put a coat on her, she thought I was meddling and wished me dead. In this life, I stopped meddling. And now she says I have a wicked heart. Indeed, the wicked have their own twisted logic. My father looked at me and said with disappointment, "Chinghe, I originally thought you were a well-behaved one. But I never expected you to be so foolish and cold-hearted. Since that's the case, don't blame your father for being ruthless." Kui Chingareo glanced at me triumphantly, as if certain that I was nothing but a pile of mud beneath her feet, forever destined to be her stepping stone. But my father added, "However, Chingareo, it's good that you have the heart to share the crown prince's worries, but for now, don't take any action on this matter, and don't mention it in front of the crown prince either. I have my own plans." This was not a glorious affair. If Kui Chingareo intervened before even becoming the crown princess, it would inevitably invite criticism. But Kui Chingareo was not pleased. "Why, I want to be a virtuous helpmate to the crown prince. If I don't bring it up, what if mainland takes the initiative first?" My father couldn't persuade him and was about to compromise. The next moment, the prefect came to our door and, without any polite words to my father, directly asked about Kui Chingareo. "The Marquis of Yongning has brought his daughter to the Yamen to file a complaint, saying that you framed her at the princess's flower-viewing banquet, tarnished her reputation, and caused the death of her beloved pet, which is worth 3,000 taels. Is this true?" Kui Chingareo probably never expected mainland to report it to the authorities. After all, she thought mainland loved the crown prince just as much as she did and would never want to put him in a difficult position. However, After escorting her back to her residence, the crown prince went to the marquis's estate to see Shen Minglan, presenting her with priceless southern pearls to console her, and even promised to make her his principal consort. Shen Minglan's decision to report the matter to the authorities was also tacitly approved by the crown prince. In his view, all of this was nothing more than a petty squabble between young women over a man's affections, hardly worth mentioning. He also subconsciously regarded Kui Qing'ao as nothing more than a concubine or a maidservant. My father pleaded and reasoned, and even paid 5,000 taels of silver before the magistrate finally relented, agreeing to find a scapegoat at the flower banquet to avoid offending either side. Kui Qing'ao was overjoyed, believing that happiness was just within her reach. However, father flew into a rage and slapped Kui Qing'ao across the face. I went to great lengths to settle the matter in Tanju. Also, you could smoothly become the crown princess. How could you be so foolish as to ruin your own reputation? Even if the crown prince wants you, he can't possibly make you his principal consort. Kui Qing'ao's lips were bleeding from the slap, but she gritted her teeth. The crown prince has me in his heart. He will surely overcome all opposition and choose me as his principal consort. I couldn't help but laugh. Against all odds, what a dream. Do you think that once clothes have fallen to the ground, they can simply be picked up again? Yes, the crown prince and I grew up together. He must have feelings for me. Kui Qing'ao murmured to herself, her voice full of confidence. But I knew she was already regretting it. After all, if it had been just a little later, when the minister of Dali Temple entered the capital, she would have regained her former glory. But from the moment she decided to take off her clothes, she truly could no longer put them back on. The next day, the painting of the flower banquet beauty became all the rage in the capital. On every street corner and in every pleasure house, tales of Kui Qing'ao's charm and grace spread far and wide. Some portraits of beauties, completely unclothed and exuding sensuality in their every gesture, all bore the face of Kui Qing'ao. Kui Qing'ao was so furious she felt like vomiting blood. She stormed into my room with a large group of people in tow. Bitch, was it you who did it? I was utterly bewildered. Father said that if your reputation is ruined, I will suffer as well. How would I dare to do such a thing? Kui Qing'ao kicked my embroidery frame away. What more misfortune could you possibly suffer? Father has already promised to marry you off to Lord Chen from the Ministry of Justice. Your life has already been ruined by me, so now you don't want me to have it easy either. Also, the herbs in my sachet would drive beasts wild when mixed with the scent of the 9-colored sacred lotus. You were the one who told that bitch Shen Minglan, weren't you? I couldn't help but ask, if that's the case, sister, why are you still blaming me for not lending you my coat? Kui Qing'ao let out a cold laugh. How I act is my own business. If you don't side with me, you're just malicious. I've wasted my kindness taking you, a daughter of a concubine, with me everywhere all this time. Her tone suddenly shifted, and Kui Qing'ao's eyes lit up. The East Palace is about to select a crown princess. We are family, we are sisters. Don't you usually treat me well and support me in everything outside? This time, please help me too. Okay, yes, I am a concubine-born daughter, and I don't have a favored mother. To live well, I have to do my best to please the legal wife and her daughter. But no matter how much I do for them, they never treat me as a human being. To cover up one scandal, you must replace it with another. Dear sister, tell me, if I spread the images of you with that beggar, then wrap you in white silk, and father removes your name from the family register, wouldn't that save me? I clenched my fists tightly, letting my nails pierce through the flesh. This could not restore her reputation. All she wanted was for me to be more miserable than her. Someone, come quickly and help second sister undress. Looking at Kui Qing'ao's arrogant face, despair surged over her overwhelmingly. Just as the servant was about to tear my clothes off, a guest arrived. The Grand Princess, supported by Shen Minglan, took her seat in the main position. The 9-colored sacred lotus bestowed upon me by His Majesty was destroyed by the 2 young ladies of your household. If I recall correctly, it was your second daughter who moved it from the pavilion, wasn't it? The eldest princess is the most beloved sister of the current emperor, even possessing her own fief and advisors. My father had just been reinstated to his official position and couldn't afford to offend her. So he pushed me forward without hesitation. Qing'ereo has always been sensible. This matter has nothing to do with her. Since Qinghe has done wrong, let her be dealt with by your highness. The eldest princess glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. Does Lord Kui truly wish to entrust this matter to my discretion? My father's expression remained calm. To receive punishment for wrongdoing is only natural. This humble official speaks without deceit. The eldest princess uttered several approving good in succession. Just as I was about to follow the grand princess, Kui Qing'ereo rushed out in a panic. Your highness, my younger sister has indeed done wrong, but she was momentarily confused, for the sake of the minister's household. Could your highness spare her life? The grand princess looked somewhat surprised, but I only sneered coldly. Sure enough, the next moment, Kui Qing'ereo spoke. The death penalty may be spared, but the living punishment is unavoidable. I have ordered her tongue to be cut out so that she will behave herself in the future. Is your highness satisfied? The princess frowned. Even Shen Minglan looked at me in disbelief. Kui Qing'ereo did this not for my sake, of course, but to shut me up. But the grand princess said, so ruthless at such a young age, Minister Kui has truly raised a fine daughter. Then she ordered her guards to escort me away in a grand procession. Kui Qing'ereo's face turned pale and ashen, likely because she realized that once I was taken away by the grand princess, there would be no way out for me either. Bitch, I'm waiting to see you die. I smiled. The one about to die is you. As soon as I entered the first princess's residence, someone untied me and served me tea. Second Miss Kui. I hope I haven't arrived too late. That day, the words Tanju that I said to Shen Minglan were taken to heart by her. The princess who was close to Shen Minglan naturally also took it to heart. And I was not mistaken. How could a princess with her own fiefdom and advisors be an ordinary person? Meeting the princess's meaningful gaze, I bowed deeply. I will not disappoint your highness in the Eastern Palace selection. After leaving the princess's residence, I jumped into the lotus pond. When I came back up, I was a complete mess. Shen Minglan let out a sigh. Why do you have to go to such lengths? I shook my head. If I return safely, Kui Qing'ereo will not let me off. The title of Marquis of Yongning was earned through military achievements, and Shen Minglan perfectly inherited the straightforwardness and boldness of a military general. She tightly held my hand, her face full of heartache. At the flower appreciation banquet, if you hadn't hinted to me, I might still be carrying the reputation of a venomous woman to this day. The way you are now is all because of me. Kui-er, no matter what happens in the future, I will definitely protect you. I smiled gently, feeling immensely grateful. But deep down, I understood that in this world, one can only save oneself. Back at the mansion, Kui Qing'ereo indeed came to cause trouble for me. However, my high fever persisted. And I was bedridden. Kui Qing'ereo, finding it unlucky, wanted to cut off my medicine and throw me out to fend for myself. My legal mother stopped her. Don't you want to share the crown prince's worries? Kui Qing'ereo snorted coldly. That's right. No one is willing to marry Lord Chen as his second wife. If I can share the crown prince's worries, he will surely cherish me even more. Enough. Kui Qing'ereo waved her hand. Let's spare her life for now, on the day of the consort selection. Lord Chen will also be present, so we might as well let them have their way directly. The crown prince loves me, and I'm thinking of him too. How dare that bitch Shen Minglan try to compete with me? I must make her lose all face. The legal mother frowned. Your father said we shouldn't mention this matter for now, especially not on the day of the consort selection. Qing'ereo, don't be foolish. Kui Qing'ereo responded with a hint of irritation. Mother, don't worry, I won't act impulsively. But seeing the urgency in her eyes, I knew she was bound to make a foolish mistake. The day of the Eastern Palace selection soon arrived. While I was still lying ill in bed, Kui Qing'ereo, dressed in lavish attire, barged in with ill intentions. Today is my auspicious day, and yours as well, dear sister. Hurry and get up to dress and make yourself presentable. The maid attending to me had tears in her eyes. Miss, the master still holds you in his heart. Since he has allowed you to participate in the imperial consort selection, you must seize this opportunity. If you can become a Liangdi, there will surely be good days ahead. I curved the corners of my lips as well. Yes, good days indeed. Kui Qing'ereo wore a look of disdain. laughing at me for dreaming an impossible dream. I also laughed at her for being too clever by half. When we arrived at the Eastern Palace Gate, Sun Xiao and Shen Minglan happened to be getting out of their carriage as well. The moment Sun Xiao saw Kui Qing'areo, she covered her mouth and laughed. "Oh my, isn't this the beauty from the flower banquet portrait? How do you still have the face to come to the Eastern Palace today?" The other noble ladies burst into laughter as well. Kui Qing'rao's face flushed crimson with anger. "The Crown Prince has me in his heart and specially invited me to participate in the selection. Once I become the Crown Princess, none of you lowly wenches will get away unscathed." Everyone exchanged glances and once again doubled over with laughter. At this moment, I felt a bit of sympathy for Kui Qing'areo. It was true that the Crown Prince had sent her to the selection, but he would never give the position of Crown Princess to someone with such a notorious reputation. Just as I had expected, the Crown Prince handed the golden comb to Shen Minglan. Kui Qing'areo only received a bronze comb. "Brother Crown Prince, didn't you say you liked me and wanted to make me your Crown Princess? How could I just be a consort?" Before the Crown Prince could speak, the Empress Dowager coldly interjected, "Given your current reputation, the Crown Prince's selection of you to enter the Eastern Palace is already a great favor. Why aren't you expressing your gratitude?" Kui Qing'areo tugged at the Crown Prince's sleeve. "That's not it. Didn't you say you wouldn't grow tired of me and that you admired my noble character? Why are you only making me a Liangdi?" The Crown Prince frowned in irritation, but needing the support of the Minister of Personnel's household, he reluctantly replied, "I do not care for such empty reputation. But I cannot withstand the condemnation of the world, therefore, I have no choice but to wrong you." Watching Shen Minglan holding the golden comb with a mocking expression, Kui Qing'areo trembled with rage from head to toe. "And what about her? How can her reputation be any better? At the flower appreciation banquet, she framed me and ruined my reputation. How can such a malicious person be fit to be the Crown Princess?" The Empress Dowager frowned. "Minglan has a gentle and understanding nature, with a broad-minded and reasonable disposition. Do not slander her. Considering your youth, I will not hold it against you. Moreover," the Empress Dowager raised her eyes, her smile tinged with disdain, "even if you are innocent, what good does it do to expose your body in public?" Kui Qing'areo, "If you were a man, it might be different, but you are a woman, and your only value lies in serving your husband and raising children. Reputation is more important than anything. No ordinary man would marry a woman with a tarnished reputation, let alone the Crown Prince, of course." The Empress Dowager paused, her smile carrying a hint of scrutiny. "If you yourself don't care, perhaps others might even think more highly of you. But search your heart and ask yourself, can you truly face it with equanimity?" Without a doubt, Kui Qing'areo could not. She dared to use her reputation to scheme for the position of Crown Princess. Yet she couldn't bear the consequences and still sought to drag others down with her. "Attendants, I am weary. Prepare the carriage for my return to the palace." Kui Qing'areo bit her lower lip so hard that faint traces of blood appeared, her eyes filled with regret and resentment. If she could find her way back from this misguided path here, perhaps she might still save her life. Yet she straightened her back, her face full of indignation. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager comes from the Shen family, so naturally she speaks for Shen Minglan. However, selecting the Crown Princess is not merely a family matter but also a matter of state. For Her Majesty to show such favoritism toward Shen Minglan is hardly fair. The hall instantly fell as silent as a cicada in winter. The noble ladies bowed their heads, each lower than the last. The Empress Dowager smiled. "Favoritism? Do you really think I don't know what you did at the flower viewing banquet? Kui Qing'areo, look at this. Does it look familiar?" She saw the discarded sachet appear on the sandalwood table. Kui Qing'rao's forehead was beaded with cold sweat, yet she spoke with unshakable confidence. "This is my sachet, which I lost a long time ago. How did it end up in your Majesty's possession?" The Empress Dowager studied her as if she were some rare curiosity. Truly sharp-tongued. "Since you admit this sachet is yours, then the 9 luo herb inside must also be connected to you, I presume." The imperial physician said that the scent of the 9 luo grass mixed with the 9-colored sacred lotus can drive cats and dogs mad. "Lady Kui, do you admit your guilt?" That day, Kui Chingero repeatedly pressured me to bring the 9-colored sacred lotus, which became the ironclad evidence of her crime. If Kui Chingero had still held a glimmer of hope just moments ago, she was now completely panicked. "No, Your Majesty, this matter has nothing to do with me. This sachet was given to me by my half-sister Kui Chinghe, and it was also her who insisted on carrying the 9-colored sacred lotus to me. It truly has nothing to do with me." As soon as she finished speaking, Kui Chingero grabbed my arm tightly. "Sister, dear sister, please say it, the sachet is yours. The flowers were also brought by you, and none of this has anything to do with me. Please say it quickly." She lowered her head again and spoke in a voice only we could hear. "Kui Chinghe, if you just agree and help me get through this, I won't make you become a second wife anymore. I'll even find you a good marriage, but if you refuse, I'll make your life a living hell." I found it utterly ridiculous. Even now, she still couldn't grasp the situation. "My dear sister, it is you who will soon find life worse than death." Kui Chingero was furious and wanted to hit me, but she was restrained by the palace attendants, watching the livid Empress Dowager. Kui Chingero desperately tried to grab hold of the Crown Prince. "Brother Crown Prince, I am innocent, you must believe me." But the Crown Prince disdainfully patted his sleeve. "Chingero, it's not that I don't want to help you, but your actions have gone too far. If you are willing to become a Liangdi, I will plead with the Empress Dowager to spare your life. I will also persuade Mainland to forgive you." This was what the Crown Prince had planned from the very beginning. He married Shen Minglan, who held military power, as his principal consort, and chose the daughters of his mentor and the Vice Minister of Revenue as his secondary consorts. Only the position of a concubine was left for Kui Chingero. Kui Chingero finally realized that the Crown Prince did not love her, and in her panic, she spoke without thinking. "Crown Prince, my feelings for you are sincere. You cannot betray me like this. You've invited Minister Chen from the Ministry of Justice several times, and each time he put on airs with you. Brother Crown Prince, if you want to win him over, I can help. Isn't he looking for a new wife? I've found one for you, right here." Although the 7th-rank supervising secretary of the Ministry of Justice holds a low official position, his power is substantial. The Crown Prince sought to win this person over in order to overturn a court case. If this matter had been handled privately, perhaps the Crown Prince would have praised her for being considerate, but in front of others, Kui Chingero's action undoubtedly put the Crown Prince in a difficult position. Sure enough, the Crown Prince couldn't hold back his anger and slapped Kui Chingero across the face. "You foolish woman, what nonsense are you spouting?" By the time my father and stepmother arrived, the Imperial Guards had also come, tossing aside the gold ingots my father had sent. "Your daughter's words have reached His Majesty's ears. The Emperor has ordered this humble servant to invite Miss Kui into the palace. I hope Lord Kui will not make things difficult for this servant." My legal mother wept and sobbed, clutching my father's arm tightly. "My lord, Chingero must have offended His Majesty. You are her biological father, you must save her." My father let out a thoughtful hum and cupped his hands in salute to the chief eunuch. "My daughter is frightened and not in her right mind. May I accompany her into the palace?" The eunuch offered a hollow, insincere smile. "Lord Kui, why the rush? His Majesty has also summoned you for an audience. Father, with you here, I will be safe, won't I?" Kui Chingero tugged at my father's sleeve and spoke excitedly, completely oblivious to his deathly pale face. After the eunuch left, the noisy Eastern Palace instantly fell silent. Through the crowd, Shen Minglan flashed me a smile. Until evening, Kui Chingero and my father had not returned. My stepmother was anxiously pacing around the mansion and did not notice that I had already sent my packed luggage out of the estate. Early the next morning, officials broke through the gates of the Kui residence. The entire household, except for me, the one who had righteously turned against my own kin, exposed my biological father for embezzling disaster relief funds, substituting inferior goods, and framing colleagues, was taken to prison. When I went to visit Kui Chingero in prison, Shen Minglan and Sun Xiao happened to be coming out. I hid behind a pillar, watching them walk together toward a luxurious carriage. The lantern on it bore the unmistakable emblem of the princess's residence. In the dim prison cell, Kui Chingareo had lost all her former elegance. Upon seeing me, she frantically reached out to strike me. You vile woman, it's all your fault. My father also cursed me harshly, you ungrateful and unfilial fool. Do you think you'll be better off just because the Kui family has fallen? Without the Kui family, you are nothing but worthless scum. I looked down at them from above. Do you know where you went wrong? My father snorted coldly. My only mistake was giving birth to a despicable creature like you. Kui Chingareo was glaring at me, but suddenly lowered her head in confusion. I pinched her chin, forcing her to look up. Let me tell you what you did wrong. Some clothes, once taken off, can never be worn again. And you, father. My father turned his head away, ignoring me. I smiled. Father, what does it matter that you are a man? From the moment you took off your official robe in Tanju for your own selfish desires, you could never wear a single piece of clothing again. With that, I turned and left. No matter how much cursing followed me from behind, I did not look back even once. As soon as I stepped out of the prison, I shouldered my hidden pack, found a swift horse, and headed straight for the city gates. The setting sun shimmered like rippling water, casting its light upon my coarse linen robe. A sense of relief, as if having narrowly escaped disaster, finally welled up in my heart. I breathed a long, easy sigh, then spurred my horse to gallop freely through the forest, feeling carefree and unrestrained, never looking back. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.